Have you ever walked into a room full of strangers and felt your entire world shift the moment your eyes met one particular person? Not because they were the most attractive or charismatic, but because something deeper stirred within you, something that whispered, "I know you," even though you've never seen them before in your life. Imagine standing in that moment, feeling your heartbeat slow down while simultaneously feeling more alive than you have in months. There's no logical explanation for why this stranger feels like coming home. This isn't just romantic fantasy or wishful thinking. According to Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists in history, these moments of inexplicable recognition reveal something profound about the nature of human connection and the mysterious workings of our unconscious mind. What you're experiencing isn't coincidence. It's your soul recognizing a missing piece of itself reflected in another human being. Most people dismiss these experiences as chemistry or attraction, but Jung discovered something far more fascinating. He realized that when someone feels meant for you, it's not just about them at all. It's about you finally encountering a living mirror of the parts of yourself you've been unconsciously seeking. The stranger who stops you in your tracks isn't just another person. They're a key to unlocking chambers of your psyche that have been waiting in the shadows. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. Jung believed that these encounters don't happen randomly. They occur precisely when your inner world has evolved enough to recognize what it needs. You weren't ready for this person a year ago, maybe not even a month ago, but something within you has shifted, grown, awakened, and suddenly the universe seems to respond by placing exactly the right person in your path. Think about the last time you felt that inexplicable pull towards someone. Was it really about their personality or appearance, or was it something deeper, something that seemed to bypass your rational mind entirely and speak directly to a part of you that rarely gets acknowledged? Jung would say that what you were experiencing was your anima or animus, the hidden feminine or masculine aspect of your psyche, recognizing its counterpart in the external world. For men, the anima represents the suppressed feminine qualities: intuition, emotion, creativity, the capacity for deep feeling. For women, the animus embodies the often unexpressed masculine elements: strength, logic, direction, the drive to act decisively. These aren't gender stereotypes, but psychological archetypes that exist within everyone, regardless of biological sex. And when you meet someone who embodies the qualities your psyche has been yearning to integrate, the recognition can be overwhelming. This is why you can spend hours talking to someone you just met and feel like you're finally having the conversation you've been waiting your entire life to have. It's why their presence can make you feel simultaneously vulnerable and safe, challenged and accepted. They're not just reflecting your conscious desires, they're illuminating aspects of yourself that you didn't even know existed. But Jung's insights go even deeper than personal psychology. He discovered that when these meaningful encounters occur, they're often accompanied by what he called synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that seem to defy rational explanation. You think of someone and they call. You take an unplanned detour and bump into exactly the person you needed to meet. You overhear a conversation that contains the exact words you needed to hear. These aren't accidents or coincidences. According to Jung, synchronicities are moments when your inner world and the external reality align so perfectly that the boundary between them seems to dissolve. It's as if the universe itself is responding to the evolution of your consciousness, orchestrating encounters that serve your psychological and spiritual development. Imagine for a moment that every person you've ever felt inexplicably drawn to was actually a messenger from your unconscious mind, carrying information about who you're becoming and what parts of yourself are ready to emerge. Suddenly, those intense connections that seemed to come from nowhere begin to make perfect sense. They weren't random attractions. They were your psyche's way of guiding you toward wholeness. This is why the people who affect us most deeply often arrive at precisely the moments when we're ready for significant internal change. They don't show up to complete us, as romantic mythology suggests, but to reveal us to ourselves. Through their eyes, we see aspects of our personality that have been dormant. Through their responses to us, we discover capacities we didn't know we possessed. But here's the part that most people find both fascinating and terrifying. When someone is truly meant for you in this deeper sense, the connection often feels effortless and inevitable, while simultaneously challenging everything you thought you knew about yourself. They make you feel understood and completely exposed. At the same time, they bring out your best qualities and force you to confront your shadows. Jung understood that meaningful relationships aren't just about compatibility or shared interests. They're about psychological evolution. When two people connect at this archetypal level, they become catalysts for each other's individuation, Jung's term for the process of becoming your authentic self. They push each other to grow in ways that might be uncomfortable, but are ultimately necessary for psychological maturity. This is why these connections can feel so intense and sometimes overwhelming. You're not just getting to know another person, you're discovering new dimensions of yourself through their presence. Every interaction becomes a form of psychological archaeology, uncovering buried aspects of your personality that have been waiting for the right person to bring them to light. The strangest part? Often, the people who feel most meant for you aren't necessarily the ones who share your obvious interests or background. Instead, they're the ones who complement your psychological structure in ways that promote growth. They possess qualities that your unconscious recognizes as essential for your development, even if your conscious mind can't immediately understand why you're so drawn to them. This creates one of the most beautiful paradoxes of human connection. The person who feels most like home might actually be the one who challenges you to venture into completely unfamiliar territory within yourself. They feel familiar because they resonate with archetypal patterns in your psyche, but they also feel exciting because they represent possibilities you haven't yet explored. Jung believed that when we encounter someone who activates these deep psychological processes, we're experiencing something far more significant than ordinary attraction. We're witnessing the unconscious mind's incredible capacity to recognize what it needs for growth and healing. Your psyche, operating below the threshold of conscious awareness, has identified another person whose psychological makeup perfectly complements your own developmental needs. But here's what makes this even more remarkable. This process is entirely mutual. When you feel that inexplicable recognition with someone, they're experiencing the same phenomenon from their side. Your psychological structure is serving as a mirror for their unconscious contents, just as theirs is for yours. You're not just finding someone who feels meant for you, you're becoming someone who feels meant for them. This mutual recognition creates a feedback loop that can accelerate psychological growth for both people involved. Through the responses to you, you learn about aspects of your personality that you couldn't see on your own. Through your responses to them, they discover parts of themselves that had remained hidden. The relationship becomes a laboratory for self-discovery, with each person serving as both researcher and subject. Understanding this process can completely transform how you think about relationships and compatibility. Instead of looking for someone who fits a predetermined list of qualities, you begin to pay attention to the people who stir something deep within you, even if you can't immediately explain what that something is. You start to trust your unconscious wisdom over your conscious preferences. But if this resonates with something deep inside you, if you're starting to see your own experiences through this psychological lens, don't let this moment pass by. This video is just the beginning of exploring these profound insights into human connection and the mysteries of the unconscious mind. Hit that subscribe button now, not just to support this content, but because your future self will thank you for continuing this journey of psychological discovery. The next video might contain the exact insight that transforms how you understand yourself and your relationships forever. Most people spend their entire lives searching for that perfect person who will complete them, never realizing that what they're actually seeking is integration with the hidden aspects of their own psyche. Jung discovered that the most powerful romantic and spiritual connections occur not when we find our missing half, but when we encounter someone who helps us become whole within ourselves. This is why certain people can walk into your life and immediately make you feel like you're finally breathing properly. It's not that they're giving you something you lack. They're awakening something within you that was always there but remained dormant. Their presence creates a resonance that allows suppressed aspects of your personality to emerge naturally without force or effort. Think about the most significant relationships in your life, not just romantic ones, but friendships and mentorships that changed your trajectory. Notice how these people didn't just make you happy, they made you more yourself. They created a space where parts of your personality that rarely saw daylight could finally emerge and flourish. Jung would say this is because their psychological structure complemented yours in ways that facilitated individuation. But here's where Jung's insights become almost mystical in their implications. He observed that these meaningful encounters often occur during periods of significant internal transition, as if the external world responds to changes in our psychological state by providing exactly the relationships we need for the next phase of our development. You outgrow one relationship and suddenly someone appears who challenges you in entirely new ways. You develop a new aspect of your personality and attract people who appreciate and nurture that emerging quality. This suggests that our capacity to recognize who is meant for us evolves as we do. The person who felt like your soulmate at 25 might feel completely wrong at 35, not because either of you has become a worse person, but because you've both continued growing in different directions. Conversely, someone you barely noticed years ago might suddenly become fascinating as you develop new facets of your personality that resonate with theirs. Jung believed this process of attraction and recognition operates primarily through the unconscious, which is why we often can't explain our deepest connections rationally. Your conscious mind might prefer someone who looks good on paper, but your unconscious recognizes what your psyche actually needs for growth. This creates the common experience of being inexplicably drawn to someone who doesn't fit your usual type, but somehow feels incredibly right. The unconscious communicates through symbols, emotions, and those subtle bodily sensations that we often dismiss as just intuition. When someone is truly meant for you, your body knows before your mind does. You feel energized in their presence, not depleted. Conversations flow effortlessly, not because you agree on everything, but because there's an underlying harmony in how your minds work together. Silences feel comfortable rather than awkward, because you're both attuned to the same deeper rhythm. But Jung also understood that not every person who stirs these deep responses is meant to stay in your life permanently. Some people appear as bridges, helping you transition from one phase of development to another. Others serve as mirrors, reflecting aspects of yourself that you need to see before you can integrate them. Still, others function as catalysts, precipitating changes that you are ready to make but couldn't initiate on your own. The key is learning to recognize the difference between someone who is meant to transform you and someone who is meant to accompany you on the journey of transformation. Both are valuable, but they serve different purposes in your psychological development. The transformer might create intense, brief connections that leave you fundamentally changed. The companion creates sustained, gentle growth that accumulates over time. This is why Jung emphasized the importance of not rushing to label or possess these connections. When you meet someone who activates these deeper psychological processes, the most important question isn't, are they the one? But rather, what is this connection teaching me about myself? The relationship becomes a form of active imagination, revealing unconscious contents through lived experience rather than analysis. Sometimes the person who feels most meant for you will challenge every assumption you hold about love and compatibility. They might come from a completely different background, hold opposing political views, or approach life in ways that initially seem incompatible with your preferences. But if the deeper psychological resonance is there, these surface differences often become sources of growth rather than conflict. Jung observed that the most transformative relationships often involve what he called the tension of opposites. Two people with complementary psychological structures create a dynamic field where growth becomes inevitable. Your strengths compensate for their blind spots, and their gifts illuminate your undeveloped potentials. Together, you create something that neither could achieve alone. This process isn't always comfortable. True psychological growth rarely is. The person who is meant for you will likely trigger your deepest insecurities while simultaneously providing the safety and support you need to work through them. They'll see through your masks and defenses, not to hurt you, but because authentic connection requires authenticity from both participants. But when this kind of recognition occurs, something magical happens. With time itself, hours can pass like minutes when you're together, but those same hours contain enough meaning to sustain you for days afterward. This isn't just infatuation, it's the experience of psychological time, where significance matters more than duration. A single meaningful conversation can have more impact than years of superficial interactions. Jung believed that when two people connect at this archetypal level, they're participating in something larger than their individual personalities. They're enacting universal patterns of human experience that have been playing out for millennia. The specific details of their connection are unique, but the underlying dynamics tap into collective human wisdom about growth, healing, and transformation. This is why these relationships often feel both completely personal and mysteriously universal. You're experiencing something that is uniquely yours while simultaneously connecting with patterns that transcend individual experience. The person who is meant for you becomes a doorway into understanding not just yourself, but the fundamental dynamics of human connection. Perhaps most importantly, Jung understood that recognizing who is meant for you requires a deep level of self-awareness. You can only attract and appreciate in others what you've developed the capacity to recognize within yourself. This means that every meaningful connection is both a reflection of who you are and an invitation to become more than you currently are. The people who feel meant for you aren't accidents or coincidences. They're evidence of your unconscious wisdom operating in ways that your rational mind couldn't orchestrate. They appear when you're ready for what they represent, even if that readiness exists at levels you're not consciously aware of. So, when you encounter someone who stirs that inexplicable sense of recognition, trust it, not blindly, but consciously with awareness of what's actually happening. You're not just meeting another person, you're encountering a living symbol of your own potential for growth and transformation. Whether they stay for a season or a lifetime, they're serving the deepest purposes of your psychological development. The universe doesn't send us people to complete us. It sends us people to help us discover how complete we already are and how much more complete we can become. That's the true meaning of being meant for someone. Not destiny or fate, but the unconscious wisdom of two psyches recognizing their mutual potential for growth. Have you experienced this kind of recognition with someone in your life? That moment when everything clicked into place and you knew without knowing how you knew that this person mattered in ways you couldn't yet understand? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to make sense of their own journey. These connections shape us all, and sharing them helps us understand the deeper currents that guide human relationships.